Sup guys, Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k Tactica. Today we got a fun one. I'm going to be covering how to counter Chaos and Imperial Knights in 10th edition Warhammer 40k. This is actually a viewer request, so if you yourself have any suggestions for like future videos, let me know, man. Yeah, if you're curious about like a particular strategy, tactic, army, whatever it is, leave a comment down below. Obviously, I want to make stuff that like you guys want to see, so that'd be important. Also, if you have any questions, whether it's like general strategy, list building, any of that sort of stuff, I'm always happy to like help as best I can, so don't be afraid to reach out. As usual, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, yet again, I gotta make some shoutouts. It's getting kind of wild lately, so over just the last couple days, I've gotten 3 new channel members. So thank you, DJP, Matthew R, and Nightmare. Thank you guys so much. Like, words can't express like how awesome it is to know that like people want to like support the channel. Genuinely, like from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. Obviously, I gotta thank the others, Sellers, Timothy, all the patrons, Organ Lady, all y'all. You guys rock. Again, guys, like I can't express how awesome it is to know that people like what I'm doing. So thank you guys very much. Even you watching right now, even if you're not a subscriber, a member, or any of that stuff, thanks for watching, man. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this without you guys, so, you know, let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, like, give it a thumbs up at the least. Give me a comment if you got any questions, or, again, suggestions for the future, like, going forward. With that all out of the way, though, so, Chaos Knights, and Imperial Knights for that matter, should you be afraid of them? In my opinion, no, not at all, man. Honestly, I think they're one of the easiest armies to beat once you, like, know the, like, game plan and the strategy behind what you should be doing. So hopefully, after this video, you get a better idea. Of course, you want to come prepared. I'll get into the specifics here in a little bit, but make sure, like, your list is able to take it on. Now, don't list Taylor. I do not recommend that at all. Even if you only fight, like, Imperial Knights all the time, don't freaking list Taylor. A, it's lame. B, it makes you a worse player. C, you're going to come up against somebody who's not a Knight player, and they're going to, like, just stomp you or whatever. So never do that. I will say, though, in smaller point games, that's where these guys are really a pain in the ass. In a smaller point game, especially if you have, like, a small collection, so you don't own much anti-tank or whatever it is, maybe you should consider making an agreement with your opponent, like, hey, I should get a stratagem that gives me, like, +1 to hit, +1 to wound versus, like, the big knights at least, like, something like that, something to even the playing field, because in 1K games, they can be, like, borderline unfair. Now, they're not impossible to beat, and this even applies like 2K, so maybe you got like a limited collection, so you can't just like toss some more anti-tank, you got what you got, whatever the reason is. Well, like I said in the beginning, once you have like a general game plan, once you know how to like counter the strategy that they're trying to go for, yeah, dude, your odds should skyrocket. Now, obviously, there's nuance to everything, so maybe it's a really good general, like, you know, that'll be a pain in the butt. Maybe the dice just aren't with you, definitely, and maybe the dice are with them. Like, that's gonna hurt really bad, man. When they roll hot, like, yeah, dude, it gets pretty painful there. That said, they have a lot of weaknesses that we're gonna take advantage of, and yes, we can actually get right into it. So, first of all, the golden rule. So this is the golden rule, and this applies to any and every, like, video I've ever made in my life. The golden rule, scoring over all. It does not matter, dude. You cannot kill a single knight. It doesn't matter so long as the scoreboard is higher than theirs. I think that's ultra important, even when you're, like, beginning to write your list. Before you even write your list, you need to be thinking, how am I going to outscore my opponent? No matter what, like, army they're playing. That's always, like, the basic game plan. With knights, that goes doubly so, though. Knights do have issues scoring. There's big issues going on. They typically have a limited amount of models. They really don't want to be doing actions with their, like, big, expensive, even the smaller ones, like, the bare minimum is, like, 150 points. Something around that is, like, the cheapest way that they'd be able to do an action without, obviously, the allies that they bring in. That's why you see, like, Voidsmen and all that sort of stuff. Now, I should mention, too, real briefly, these are all tournament lists that I have loaded. This guy went, like, 6-0 right here. I'll post them in the description below in case you guys want to check them out. Maybe you yourself play Knights, you're interested in them, or you want to, like, learn your enemy better. But these are, like, very standard lists. This is, like, the most stereotypical Chaos Knight list you'll ever see in your life. Nothing but War Dogs. This is an incredibly standard Imperial Knight list. I see this all the time. They got the Canis Rex, and then a boatload of the War Dogs. I don't normally see as many Voidsmen, but I think that's the route that a lot of players are going to go. I think it's smart, too. If I was to make an IK list, that's definitely the route I would go. And then the third style that I do see fairly often, I thought this, like, literally yesterday, I think it was, a list just like this. It has 2 Questoris, and then the rest are the doggies. Definitely be aware that with Imperial Knights, at least, the Callidus Assassin, ultra extremely common. So you got to be aware that, like, they're going to make your battle tactics cost more. Be careful about that. That includes the command reroll, man. They might make that cost more, so be aware of that. They can also uppy downy every single turn at the end of your turn, so, like, learn the Callidus if you're fighting a lot of Imperial Knights. But back to scoring, though. So like I said, it goes doubly so with these guys. Your number one, like, hyper-focus needs to be, how do I outscore this dude? Way more than, like, killing them or any of that sort of stuff. Now, I do think fixed secondaries is, like, often still the way to go. They did change the bring it down secondary, so you do only get 2 victory points for each armature. However, you get 6 victory points for each of the big guys, so I still think that's like, yeah, that's the way I would still go. For your second one, obviously depends on your list. I like positional ones, honestly, so like behind enemy lines, engage on all fronts. You can also do like Cleanse or the Locust, whatever the new Deploy Teleport homers is called. Those are all good options. One thing Knights struggle with most of the time, they struggle with screening you out. So if you have deep strikers or, again, positional secondaries, that sort of stuff, they're really going to struggle with it. Not only because they're single model bases, so like it's really hard to keep like the corner covered, but they don't want to leave their dudes behind necessarily. Now, you will learn over time as you fight them that, yeah, like Helverins, they usually stay behind. The big dudes are usually up in your face. Warglaives are definitely up in your face. With these guys, Brigands, they're like mid-range or whatever. So you'll learn over time, like, the different units. But again, they have trouble screening out, so take advantage of it. You can still go tactical. Again, it all depends on your list. And tactical very much, like, should, like, score, if your list is built for it, tactical should score you more. Issue is like, yeah, you can't like plan around it, obviously. So you don't know if you're gonna have to be like in the back corner one turn. Next turn, you gotta bring it down. You gotta kill the big ass guy in the middle. Like, it does vary there. So usually, truthfully, yeah, me personally, I go fixed like 90% of the time when I'm fighting the Knights. Now, the Knights themselves, they hate doing tactical, in my experience. They freaking hate it like more than anything. Because again, they only have limited profiles, and the ones they do have, for the most part, are way too expensive to be like running off to a random corner to do an action or whatever. So they're often gonna do like fixed. So, if you do fight a lot of Knights and you are, like, worried about it, maybe you're an asshole and you do want to tailor or whatever, try to make sure that your list doesn't give up too many points. So don't, like, overdo it on characters. Don't overdo it on vehicles. Like, all that sort of stuff. Keep that in mind when you're fighting them. Very much they're going to prefer going, like, fix themselves. One last thing when it comes to secondaries, be careful with Assassinate. Luckily, it's not as big a deal as it used to be, because usually, a lot of times you only see a single freaking character in their list, but be careful with Assassinate, because often, with Imperial Knights especially, it's freaking Canis Rex, and he's a pain in the ass to deal with, and then a Callidus, like, good luck into her. You can do it, you can Deep Strike and just blast her right away. You can get within 9 inches and blast her, but she does have Lone Off and a 4-up in-ball, so, like, she's a slippery little devil. Again, I don't really recommend going Assassinate unless they're bringing, like, a boatload of Inquisitors or something like that. So again, guys, that's the golden rule. Make sure you make, like, your hyper-focus. How am I going to outscore this dude? I know I'm, like, Captain Obvious over here, but, like, don't get distracted by the carnivores in your face. The big scary robot shooting you across the table, whatever it is. Make sure each and every turn, the very first thing you're thinking of is how I'm going to outscore this dude. Second thing you need to think of, how am I going to prevent him from scoring? Sometimes it does work out perfect, too. My game the other night, man, I had them, they got a hyper-focus on killing me. They weren't worried about scoring at all. I don't think they scored a single secondary until, like, the 3rd turn. It was, like, kind of ridiculous. And what's cool about that, when that happens, he was, like, killing my models, whatever. They get, like, lulled into a sense of security or whatever. Yeah, they get kind of, like, fooled into thinking they're doing well. And it's like, dude, look at the scoreboard. You literally have, like, 12 points to my, like, 38. Like, how are you even gonna catch up? So, again, make it the priority, guys. Alright, with that all out of the way, so we can finally hop into, like, the real tips. Hopefully I hammered in your head, like, how important that was. So, tip number 1 is gonna be kind of obvious, but let me elaborate. So the first tip, make sure you're bringing anti-tank. More specifically, make sure you're bringing enough anti-tank. So the old adage when Knights came around, I'm pretty sure Knights showed up in, like, 7th edition, that's when I remember them. The old adage was, can your list take out a Knight in a single shooting phase? If it can't, you probably need more anti-tank. Now, obviously, times have kind of changed. There's a lot of, like, nuance with it. Not every army has, like, good shooting. Not every army has, like, yeah, ranged anti-tank options. In that case, obviously, you're going, like, melee. Not every army is even able to, like, have, like, good anti-tank, period. Tyranids kind of struggle with it. Like, they kind of top out at Strength 9. They got a few options above it, but for the most part, like, Strength 9 is where they kind of top out. Very much they're going to struggle with these. In those cases, look for, like, dev wounds. Look for lethal hits. Look for anti-vehicle 4-up. Any sort of stuff like that that's in your list. Most armies, if not every single army, should have access to that. Especially the dev wounds and, like, the anti-vehicle. I have Vashtor when I play, like, Chaos Space Marines. That dude is such a pimp, man. When I was playing my game the other night, he was just killing, like, Armigers left and right, each and every turn. My opponent even came in with a Warglaive, and he was, like, getting all these plans in his head on, how he's gonna charge him. And I straight up told him, like, he's probably not going to make it the next turn, and, and that's exactly what happened. But again, make sure you're able to kill the Knights. Now, we'll get into the specifics of target priority here in a moment. I'll give you a hint. Kill the small ones first. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So don't worry so much about killing the big ones. It's not, like, that ultra important, at least early on. And in fact, you can ignore them. Again, we'll get into specifics here in a little bit. But make sure, at the very least, you should be able to kill an Armiger a turn. Preferably from range and melee. You should be able to do both. If you're able to do that, man, like, you're already, like, yeah, you're already on a course for, like, a good game. Me, personally, I try to bring, like, at least 3 units. Basically, I try to have, like, at least a quarter of my list, preferably, like, a third, set up for anti-tank. Now, again, times are changing. With Pariah Nexus here, battle line's more important. The Orc Codex is like a theme, so like we're seeing way more like hordes than we used to. So that's actually like, bring anti-tank, make sure you bring an anti-horde as well. Even for Chaos Knights, you like, don't be surprised if they start bringing like boatloads of freaking Voidsmen or something like that. But regardless, make sure you can kill at least one Armiger, like reliably, make sure you can kill at least one Armiger each turn. Honestly, you want to be able to like kill like 2. If you can kill 2 a turn, yeah, dude, you're gonna win by like turn 3 or turn 4, most likely, so long as you like follow the tips I'm giving you. Now, tip number 2 is like directly related. And tip number 2 is, don't forget you can use melee to take these guys out. And in fact, melee is like better if you can help it. So something about the Knights is they only get their invul save at range. They only get a 5-up invul save, often a 4-up when they rotate their ion shields, but they only get a 5-up at range. If you can get, dude, even like AP2 will do great, but you can get AP3 or above, you'll slice through them like butter. And what's cool is it sort of makes up for like lower strength. So maybe you are playing Tyranid, so maybe you do like top out strength 9. See what options you got that have the higher AP, man. That way, any hits that do get through, like, you make them count. Now, obviously, it's super duper gonna pop off when you have, like, high strength and the AP. So, again, Vashtor is pretty good. And again, he only has AP 2. That's only, like, middling AP. That's fantastic in the Knights. You force him on a 5-up save all the time. When I do the Soulforged War Pack, I got Stratagem. I can increase the AP. Maybe I brought a Terminator Sorcerer. I can go even higher. Dude, when you can bypass it completely, they very much are just gonna, like, melt like butter. If you're able to, like, stage, so make sure you got good terrain, obviously. Make sure you got good terrain. So this is actually, like, a terrible table right here. But make sure you got, like, good terrain. If you're able to stage your melee units, like, in the middle of the board, your Knight player, if they're smart, they're not even gonna come near you, man. And maybe you can, like, cover an objective. Hopefully you can cover, like, multiple objectives. Yes, dude, that's really gonna throw a wrench in their plan. Melee is almost better than the ranged anti-tank. Now, obviously, you do have to get up to them and all that sort of stuff, so it's not, like, truly better. But when you get in there with your, like, charge phase or whatever, oh, dude, it's gonna pay dividends. All right, next tip kind of goes into like list creation stage, but make sure you're including move blockers. And when I say move blockers, I really mean like infiltrators. So me, as a Chaos player, I love my Nurglings. I still think they're great, even in Pariah Nexus. They just have too much value to them. But even, maybe you got, like, Scout Marines. Whatever army you are, like, check your books, see what infiltrators you got. What's beautiful about them, they work for, like, take-all-comer lists. It's not only Knights that you need them, and they'll work in, like, every situation. They help us score in secondaries, they can do the move blocking, they can screen, like, you name it, they can do it, man. So, like, you should be including them anyways. But they're especially good versus Knights. Now, something to know if you didn't already, so the big ones have the super heavy rule. They can basically walk over like anything, like pretty much anything, so it's not another Titanic unit. They can even walk over vehicles, like all that sort of stuff. However, what you would do, measure out their movement. So if he moved 8 inches, whatever it is, 10 inches, I would set up a unit so that it blocks where he's trying to end his move. And what's cool is if you got a big unit, you can set him up like that, so he loses like almost all of his movement. Now, obviously, yes, he could go around, but maybe you're in an alley, like whatever the reason is, that's the way you block the big ones. I totally did that the other night. He used, here's another tip about Imperial Knights specifically. They have an enhancement that lets them, at the end of your turn, they can go into reserves and come down on the board. They can do a turn 1 deep strike with the freaking, whatever this guy's called, the Valiant or whatever. They can do a turn 1 deep strike with that guy if they wanted to. Well, he did exactly that with the big guy. He came out my back corner. I had Cultists back there. I already stuckied the objective. I ran away from the guy. I knew I didn't want to deal with him, so I just ran up the board. I was like, yeah, you know, you can just sit back there all game if you want. You can only do it once per battle. And then I used the Cultist to buy me an extra turn. I did exactly what I said. I just moved, I moved so he couldn't move anywhere out of that corner. He had no line of sight on the rest of my army. He got to shoot a bunch of cultists, like clap, clap, clap. He destroyed my 50-point unit with your 450-point model. Like, good job there. But again, use move blockers. Nurgling, same thing. Now, War Dogs, they aren't able to walk over stuff. Not enemy models, at least. Yeah, they aren't able to walk over them, so you can do it the old-fashioned way. You can just set them up, like, right in front of them. I think it's ultra important for pretty much every single list ever. Not just move blocking, but just infiltrators, period. If they have a bunch of, like, carnivores or something, so maybe you're fighting, like, Chaos Knights, okay, do be a little more careful there. You don't want to, like, give them free movement with like, a bad infiltrate. But otherwise, versus most armies, I think it's one of the better, like, unit types you can bring along. On a related note, like, use reserves, period, and use, like, deep strikers. I mentioned it way earlier, but Knights have, like, a hell of a time screening. Yeah, dude, they can't, like, screen worse shit. Because, again, they got single models. So this guy right here, I'm not even sure he was able to screen the corner. Even if he would, like, I'd have an opening right there, of course. It's nigh impossible for them to, like, completely screen out even their own deployment zone. So definitely take advantage of that. I love Raptors. I think Raptors are, like, fantastic. Warp Talons are great, too. Warp Talons are pretty good versus Knights as well. Like, they don't do that many wounds, but they have pretty high IP, and they are re-rolling their wounds, so, like, they do okay. take a look at your list, make sure you're including deep strikers. Again, this applies to like take all comers. This applies to every list ever, so it's like beautiful. You're not handicapping yourself at all by like tossing them in there, so make sure you're like, yeah, including those if you're able to. And then the last thing that's related to all of this, obviously guys, this is like Captain Obvious, make sure you're using terrain to your advantage. Knights have a hell of a time like dealing with terrain, dude. They gotta go the long way around stuff. Now, Chaos Knights do have a stratagem that lets either 2 War Dogs or one of the big guys, like, move through terrain. So do be careful with that, and that's actually one of the better stratagems they could possibly ask for. And if Imperial Knights had that too, they'd be doing a lot better. By the way, they are doing pretty good. I think they're at like a 51% win rate, which is actually pretty good. I guess they fight a lot of newbies or something, I don't know. But regardless, use the terrain to your advantage, not only for like blocking line of sight, but just cover, period. They don't always have the best like AP, especially the Helverins. Helverins are just AP 1. Even into basic infantry, man, you could be like rolling a shitload of saves just by like using cover to your advantage. All right, next tip. So this gets into target priority. So the way I do and the way I recommend doing it, always try to kill the small ones first. So kill the Armigers and the War Dogs first if you can. Reason being, they're doing all the heavy lifting for the Knights. They're like the most important units in the entire army. They do all the actions for them. They take the primaries. They flip objectives. They're small. They can get through like crevices and that sort of stuff. They're fast too. They are like by far the most important units in the entire army. Obviously, Chaos Knights, like they're like the only unit you're gonna see. But even with Imperial Knights, I think they're way more important than any, even like Canis Rex. I think they're way better than even Canis Rex is. I'm surprised they don't do like entirely dog list. Although I guess I'm not a Knight player, so I can't say. But I do like kind of understand. Canis Rex is pretty wild. But like it's pretty obvious. They're easy to kill too. So your odds of kill him, you can kill him with like a single freaking Forge Fiend or something. He has a chance of actually killing one in just a single like shooting attack. Whereas a big knight, you're often gonna have to focus multiple things. That means you're gonna have to like get line of sight with a bunch of units. You're gonna have to expose yourself. You're gonna have to do all that sort of stuff. When it comes to the War Dogs too, try to kill like the melee ones first if you can. Obviously like whoever's closest to you or whoever's scoring for them. And that actually is like, that's more value. Even like somebody's about to charge you, I would like heavily weigh if I want to kill the guy who's about to do an action for him instead. That way they either have to like spend the points with the big knight to go on to the objective and like take care of it then, or they gotta like turn around one of the other War Dogs. Like, yeah, dude, it really screws with their game plan. And again, remember the golden rule, we're trying to outscore them. Now with the more modern list, I guess I'll say, with the Voidsmen and that sort of stuff, very much I'd be trying to kill these guys like ASAP. And that's where having deep strikers and like reserves, that's where that comes in handy. You can even use like indirect, like whatever little trick your army brings along, very much try to kill them if you can. And in fact, if I had, maybe I was like Death Guard or something, I had a bunch of like Plague Burst crawlers, very much they would be my first freaking target. Yeah, I would want to kill them first thing first if I could. That way they have to dedicate somebody to sit on their home field objective. That would really hurt. Otherwise, yes, kill the War Dogs first, and often you can just ignore the Knights. Which does actually get into my next tip. So the next tip is, don't be afraid to ignore things, man. Again, when that player, he deep struck behind me, I completely ignored him. I ran away from him. I even thought out loud. I said, should I deal with the guy or should I ignore him? Should I deal with him? Yeah, I think it's better to just ignore him. So I just ran away from him, continued to kill the little Armigers, and dude, it worked out perfect. Again, they're like 500 points, almost 500 points, so like 450 points, what's essentially a paperweight. Now they are very killy. Anything they get line of sight on, there's very high odds that they're going to kill it, no matter what it is. So I could have like a Forge Fiend out in the open or whatever. There's pretty good odds that he's going to kill it. Now, I will say the Valiant, he doesn't have the best range. I believe like 18-inch range for his main weaponry. 18-inch range is what you really need to worry about. He does have like the shield breaker missiles. Those are pretty good, but everything else for the most part is like 18. So yeah, dude, just keep your distance from him. Again, throw screens in his face. I should have mentioned that, and that should be like a separate tip. Don't be afraid to just throw away units, man. If it buys you an extra turn of like delaying their movement, messing with their target priority, forcing them to shoot something that's on an objective instead of your like keystone unit, very much don't be afraid to like throw it in their face. But again, the War Dogs are the priority. If you have to ignore the big guys for a little bit, that's just how it goes, man. And truthfully, that is like the play a lot of time, in my opinion. Like I mentioned, as the golden rule, man, we're trying to outscore them. So if you have to pay 150 points to score 5 victory points, that's a fair trade. I would do that any day of the week. All right, next tip is sort of advanced, more like a mind game, but try to bait out their stratagems. So a big one you're going to see like every game ever, if not every turn, is rotate ion shields. Basically, they give any one of their units, they can give them a 4-up in-ball save. When you're dealing with like a T12, 24 wound with a freaking 6-up feel no pain on top of it, like, yeah, dude, last thing I want is them blanking out half the damage just like baseline. Now, again, we like to kill War Dogs, so here's like a clever strategy that I use, and it's been pretty successful. Make them think you're going to shoot the Big Knight, then they spend the CP on it, and then, nope, I'm going back to like game plan number 1, I'm going to take out your War Dogs now that you've like wasted your stratagem on something I don't even really care about. I think that's a pretty fun way to do it. Obviously, you can do the opposite route too. Dude, good Knight players, like, they know how important their Armigers are, so they don't want them to die either, so exact opposite. You shoot the Armiger first, they drop their 4-up invul, and then you focus all your anti-tank into the big guy. And now this goes into like target priority. I should have mentioned this earlier for target priority. Make sure you're taking stuff out when you shoot it. You don't want to leave something like wounded if you can help it. Now, if you can get them to the deteriorated profile where they get -1 to hit, like, okay, that does have value to it. But for the most part, and this applies to every unit ever, this is like 101 strategy here. When you shoot something, make sure you have enough to like take it out. So if I was going to shoot a Big Knight, I would only really do it if I had multiple units and I knew I had like good odds of killing it in a single shooting phase. Otherwise, again, I try to take out the smaller stuff like as much as I can. Speaking of stratagems, so this is another tip for you, and this is a big one. Beware of tank shock. Tank shock is like their best stratagem, period. It's the best one they got, like in their, you could say in their book, but it's in the core rulebook. Beware of tank shock, man. Even on the Armigers, the anti-tank ones, like, they'll do okay, but especially the Big Knights. And you'll know, man, if they're trying to get into charge range of you, like 100% chance they're gonna tank shock you. So be aware, when you're doing like the math in your head or whatever, you're like, I wonder if you can, like, you know, kill my Forge Fiend in melee or whatever. Well, count the fact that he's gonna do 6 mortal wounds to him the second he touches him after a charge. Very much be very careful of the tank shock. That is their #1 stratagem, and a lot of them like build their game plans around it. Be careful when it comes to that. Now, the way you could avoid that, by the way, you would just like put a screen in front of your model. So yeah, if it's an important unit, you don't want them to be in charge. You should be doing this anyway, by the way, but yeah, just put a screen in front of them. The only caveat, if they can wipe out the unit with the 6 mortal wounds, be sure you're 4 inches away from them. That way they can't like pile into you directly after. But again, that's just like a basic strategy right there. Now, the next tip I got, and this is sort of a big one, sorta, be careful of their Gotchyas. So obviously you gotta like learn their stratagems, that sort of stuff, but check Goonhammer, check Wahapedia, however you want to do it, but be careful of their Gotchyas. So when it comes to like Imperial Knights, they got Shoulder the Burden. It's not that big a gotcha, but it's something they're gonna use, especially with Canis Rex. Once he's wounded, so even just a single wound is off of him, Canis Rex, if you didn't know, he gets to use the stratagem for free every single turn. I think it's every phase, in fact, but either way, he gets to use stuff for free. The Shoulder the Burden is a battle tactic. And that gives him +1 movement, toughness, save, and his objective control. It also gives him +1 to hit. It's like a major boost for free on Canis Rex, so be aware of that. Definitely don't be putting like pot shots in that guy. Like, yeah, dude, that's like the last thing you want to do. Unless it's like las cannons, I guess you can maybe consider it, but don't be just like randomly shooting him with like bolters. If you mess up and you do a single wound to him, he's gonna be using that every single time. For Chaos Knights, they have a really damn good one. I forget the name, Terror Shades or something, but either way, they can move 2 War Dogs through terrain. That is such a big deal. They can also move 1 of the big guys through terrain. So I use that with Soulforge Warpack. I use that all the time. So you can just stage behind a building, wait until your opponent gets close, and then, yep, I'm gonna charge you with my 12-inch move freaking War Dog. Carnivores are incredibly freaking killy. Definitely don't want them getting near me. So again, get on Goonhammer, get on Wahapedia, ask your friend, whatever it is, but be aware of their Gotchas and like avoid them. That applies to every army ever, but I will say with like Knights especially, they only have a couple stratagems they really use. The Rotate Ion Shields, Shoulder the Burden, like that sort of stuff. They only have a few that they're going to use, so like make sure you try to memorize them as best you can and keep them in mind as the game goes along. Alright, last tip, and this is the most important one. By the way, if I forgot any, like, be sure to leave a comment below. And I'm not just saying that for, like, the metrics or whatever. Like, seriously, not only so I can learn, but so other people can learn from, like, your tips. So if I forgot anything big, or you have your own little, like, strategy, I'd love to hear it. But regardless, the last tip and the most important, scoring, damn it! Make sure you're outscoring them. Hammer that in your freaking head. So again, when you're like move blocking, when you're screening, when you have the proper target priority, taking out the War Dogs first or whatever, scoring should be the easiest thing on earth, man. When they're down to just the big boys, you just hide out of line of sight. They're too big, fat, and dumb to like move out and get good line of sight on you. So like you're just gonna score it each and every turn. Like that's easy there. Maybe you deep strike behind them. You're doing like behind enemy lines, whatever that is. Again, they're too big, fat, and dumb to like turn around. They're too slow to like come back around, spend their 500 points to deal with your 50-point freaking deep striker. Make sure you're you're prioritizing it. Don't get scared from the like 8 freaking carnivores in your face. That's just how it goes, man. Freaking, that's every army ever. It could be orcs, it could be world leaders, it could be like even Eldar. It's all the same in the end, but it's easier. They have single models. You don't have to worry about like a half-strength unit, or a unit with like 1 or 2 models left. They pass their battle shock. Well, damn it, now they're scoring every single turn. Oh, and they're hidden behind the train. Yeah, these guys have a hell of a time hiding by themselves. Like, yeah, dude, it should be easy peasy. Once you like get rid of the fear, don't be afraid of them at all, and then just practice, guys. Practice, practice, practice. Get on Tabletop Simulator, hit up your homie. Most players have an Imperial Knight army. They're perfect for like starting out, man. If you don't have an army yet and you're watching this video, hell yeah, give Knights a look, man. I would recommend Chaos Knights. I think they look cooler, but the truth is Imperial Knights are like slightly better. As of recording, who knows what the data slate's gonna change. But regardless, make sure beyond anything, dude, you could get tabled. It doesn't matter. If the scoreboard's higher than theirs, you done won, man. You done did a good job. I'll pat you on the back. Anyways, that covers most of the stuff I wanted to. Hopefully I didn't miss anything too big. As usual, you know, if you guys have any questions at all, I'd love to hear your guys' experiences as well. Like I said, I can't remember the last time I lost to Knights. It's probably been since like 8th edition or something like that. And I'm not trying to gloat. I'm just saying, like, once you get the practice in, they're really not like that bad. But I'd love to hear your guys' experiences. Do you struggle with them? Do you have a like certain list that like kicks their ass? I should say Soulforge Warpack are like almost tailor-made to kill Knights. I almost felt bad the other day. That's why I was running. I love Soulforge Warpack. I ran them the other night, and it was almost unfair with that +1 to wound. Vindicators wound them on 2s. Dude, I've had Vindicators kill big Knights in a single like shooting attack. Just a single Vindicator. It gets kind of wild when you're rerolling all hits, hitting on 2s, exploding hits, wounding on 2s. Maybe I'm a baller. I need to include like a Lord Discordant, so I'm rerolling wound rolls of 1 as well. It gets really ridiculous with like Vindicators and stuff. Anyways, I hope this has some good info for you guys. I love like talking strategy and whatnot. If you guys have any suggestions for like future videos, I'd love to hear it. Regardless though, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with, and best of luck out there, guys.